So yeah, my name is Mike Haley, and I'm president and founder of Landmark Decisions, as a Nova Scotia-based company here, and started life as a chemist, a Dal graduate, and actually did some chemistry-related work at the early part of my career, but moved quickly into manufacturing, and then from there started Landmark about 30 years ago now, and we've always been pretty involved with what we call technology transfer, and we use a wide variety of technologies with our clients. We partner with many tech firms as well. So Landmark, now we've kind of specialized into this area of what we call business process analysis and costing. I think you'll get a feel for what that is, because it really ties into kind of our vision of DTO. And I'm going to talk a little bit more general about DTOs and so on. So we provide consulting and training to help both private and public sector. We've done a lot of work in the public sector as well as manufacturing, but that's always been my first love. So great to be here with our friends from CME. So what is a digital twin? Many people haven't even heard of that term. I think manufacturing probably more so. And Gartner, who is the world's largest IT advisory firm, defined it as basically a digital representation, i.e. involved in the software, to basically take an object, a model, or a process, or an organization and create a reflection, as it were, of that real life entity. It's a growing market. It has been growing steadily over the last 10 years. And in fact, looking at Gartner's impact radar for 2024, it's second really only to Gen AI in terms of both the mass, which means the size of the market, and the range. Now, they still have it kind of coming in 1 to 3 years to get kind of into the bullseye where we all know Gen AI is right now. But it's the next biggest thing according to Gardner. So digital twins can be broken into 3 discrete categories. The first one is actually called discrete, and then probably the one you may be more familiar with. So there's the classic jet engine. So creating a digital twin that takes data from that jet engine and allows you to simulate and anticipate and look at different scenarios and situations that engine could done impact through the software digital twin. Healthcare has seen a lot of growth with digital twin in the discrete area, i.e. a person being discrete, where there's digital modeling of now the human body, and understanding the impacts of different diseases and cures and so on. The next category is called composite, and I like to think of it as basically it's an amalgamation of discrete. So the example here is a drill rig. So the many different components, many discrete items that are on that rig that can be stitched together into forming a composite DT. So think of your production lines as potentially a composite, where you may have discrete components, different parts of machinery and so on. And as you string that together into the full line, that could be considered a composite. And last but certainly not least is organization. And this is a fairly new area of digital twin. It's only been around probably 6, maybe 7 years now. Was coined by Gartner about that time. And it really now starts to go beyond just the kind of the mechanics of a discrete composite digital twin and start looking at all the other things in the kind of the ecosystem of the organization. So things like maintenance, things like supply chain, finance, sales and marketing, management, all those other components that play a role in the overall production of your products and services. And that's really where we're going to focus today, is on that organizational side, the so-called DTO. So Gartner goes on to define a DTO as, again, dynamic software model of any organization. So it's not just manufacturing. I mean, we've done work. We did work at the height of the Passport Canada challenge a few years ago. We were asked to come in and do some DTO modeling around kind of their in-person as well as their mail operations. We've done some work for Veterans Affairs. I'm going to share with you a few of the manufacturing stories that we've done some DTOs as well. But really, Gartner says it's really around taking operational contextual data, bringing it into this system, this DTO model, to support better decision making and simulation, i.e., planning for the future. And I think that's really one of the biggest benefits of a DTO. It gives you a planning tool to test out different ideas that you have, different situations that are going to be coming down the pipe, that you want to look at what the impact on the whole organization would be. And again, it's a large market. In fact, DTO of the four kind of 3+1 categories here is expected to be the largest growth market over the next 5 to 6 years, growing to about a $60 billion market. Composite would be very close as far as total size and so on. So the importance of kind of stitching discrete components into composite and then into organizations kind of prevalent here. So what we've done and what we work with is taking some well-established techniques, I think some of you will be very familiar with, and bringing these together into a digital software tool that allows us to kind of go beyond what Gartner defines as the operational dimension. So we use the technique of value stream mapping. I'm sure many of you have participated in lean exercise and value stream mapping exercise. Very valuable component, typically both for current and future state analysis. And what we do now is we marry that up with maybe a little less common known technique called activity-based planning. It's an evolved form of activity-based costing, but it is much more operational, and I'll explain that as we move forward. So we actually look at the work that is done, the activities of the organization, and we look at processing times, because these are data elements that are shared between the two concepts. So we can actually reinforce ABP with value stream, so things like lead time, sort of value-added ratios, things like that. And on the value stream side, we can bring in some of the resource planning and costing to complement value stream. So yes, we cover that operational dimension, which gives us, high visualization. That's one key thing about a digital twin of an organization software tool, is you want to have good visualization to people understand what the processes are all about, how they interact. Useful for waste identification. The value stream does that. And then improving demand and lead times, and then certainly enhancing the demand planning. But with this technique, and mainly because of the ABP connection, we can actually now start looking at where are the constraints in the organization, and what impact does that have on our throughput and on our service or product delivery. So we can actually calculate utilization of various resources, be they labor resources or equipment resources, or even assets like the facility itself. Identification of where bottlenecks happen, and then using lean techniques, how to resolve those. Considering alternative resourcing strategies, be they insourcing or outsourcing. So all of that can be added into just this operational dimension. And as I mentioned before, we also can bring in the financial dimension. And that's really a result of having the resources, because that's where organizations spend their money, on their resources, on their people, on their facilities, on their equipment, on their utilities. It's really up to the organization, the management team, to decide how to use those resources in those cost-effective manner, but we can trace those costs through the resource consumption, which is a very operational approach to costing. So it does give us additional and better insights into costing, and ultimately then profitability analysis, looking at operational budgeting, because it's operationally driven. It's not just financially driven. It's dollars. We like to say sometimes the costs are a byproduct of good operational understanding. And obviously ROI determinations, and I'll come back to talk about that with some of the use cases we'll explore. So again, for those who have been involved with lean, DMAIC process, or even project management, I'm sure you're familiar with sometimes called the triple constraint or iron triangle. Lean is all about, or should be all about, moving the yardsticks with regard to improving the quality, ideally reducing the time to serve, and ultimately reducing the cost to serve. So lean should help you kind of rethink this triple constraint. It's not just give me any two and the other one will vary. It goes after all three components. And value stream mapping is, again, one of the leading tools for understanding lead times and processing times and identifying waste, which actually impacts on the quality side of that. What it's not so great at least my experience and being involved in lean projects for many years, is the costing side. So this is where we bring in the value of activity-based planning, because that is really strong on the costing side and also strong on the capacity side. And if we think about it, the capacity of our organization has a direct impact on not only the quality, but also the cost and our time to deliver. So understanding where the constraints exist becomes very important for all three of these components. So let's move to talk about a use case, and then I'm going to actually kind of show an illustration of kind of where Crosby's went to with their DTO modeling. So you probably recognize the symbol, particularly if you're a baker and you use Crosby's molasses. That's what they're known for. They just had a name change earlier this year and are now, because they're moving well beyond molasses, they've gone with the name Crosby Foods. They've been around for what's that, 140 years now, and it continues to be a family-owned operation. And as I say, the molasses is only a portion of their business. They do a lot of their dry powders and drink crystals and Jello products, some under their brand, some under other brands. For example, Sobeys or Best Buy. So all of the white label products that you see, they're the co-manufacturer. They're also into hot chocolate, iced teas, and so on. So they do that for actually one of the largest food companies in the world. I'll leave you to figure that one out. They are, I would say, a mid-sized company, 120 employees, running typically a 2 to 3 shift operation with revenues of about 40 million. And their approach to DTO implementation was actually classic. I mean, and certainly highly recommended. So they initially formed a multifunctional team. And so there was an individual was the production planning and analyst, their manager of continuous improvement, and one of the financial analysts were kind of the core team that went and got training, similar to the training that we were talking about earlier, that Derek had mentioned as part of this adoption program. They took that training to understand not only what a DTO could offer, but how to go about implementing that. And then they took a phased modeling approach. Landmark was involved in the training and early coaching and support, and that's really what we try to do. Obviously, it's best that clients take ownership of these DTO models, not only in their construction, but their ongoing maintenance and support. And because of the technology, which I'll show you, it's really highly engaging for plant management and also senior management. So basically, you're building this song sheet that everybody can understand and everybody can sing off. You get away from these little black books that kind of everybody has their own little Excel sheet with their own data and then kind of their own analysis, and all the time that's spent debating which one is right goes away when everybody buys into that. So this is a kind of an overview of what is their east side plant. I didn't point it out on the last slide. Crosby's have actually diversified now, and they actually have a kind of a sister company managing the bulk handling terminal in St. John, New Brunswick, which is, I think, the second largest bulk handling in Atlantic Canada now, and they're expanding that business quite rapidly. So that's what they call their west side. This is their east side, and it's basically broken into two types: dry products, and then wet products. So there's the molasses. They also do a lot of liquid sugars. But in the dry side, they do drink crystals, both their brands and other co-manufacturing brands. Same thing with the Jello products. They do a bit of organic sugar, and then this is the hot chocolate line that services that large multinational. So where they started, this tells you how many SKUs they have, and then they actually started. Oops, sorry, getting ahead of myself here. I think I hit the wheel instead of the button. So they started with a pilot model. So they picked the drink crystal area, and that was two different production lines. And basically looking at all of the blending operation to create the different drinks, and then the packaging, warehousing, and all of that went with those two products. So that was about a 2-month project. So we typically recommend, 8 to 12 weeks for doing a pilot project, to basically understand the process, understand the mechanics of laying out the design, gathering the data, ultimately using a software, DTO software tool, generating results, and actioning those results that are generated. And that's usually what we call the technology transfer period, where we would typically get involved to coach the client in the skills necessary to build and ultimately utilize the DTO tools. From there, they went on over the next 3 months to model the complete dry area. And that was really done through that team that took the lead. Landmark was involved a little bit with just coaching and a few questions here and there on maybe some interesting modeling issue, particularly when they got into the hot chocolate. Hot chocolate, because it's a milk allergen, is a totally separate facility with higher hygiene requirements and so on, and a lot of production. That's a big component of the Crosby East Side plant. Once they finished that dry product, kind of completed that major piece, they then took those skills over to the wet product lines. They have two lines, an ELF line and an ELWA line, and they modeled those quite successfully on their own. Subsequent to this, they actually did go over to the west side and did some modeling on the bulk handling as well. So they've basically done their complete operation over six. This was done during the summer period, so that would probably be more typically 2 months. So basically over half a year, they could model that entire organization. I want to move and just give you a little introduction on technologies, because obviously a DTO requires a software tool, and there are a wide variety of DTO technologies out there. So this is a company smaller in size than Gartner, but same sort of concept. They provide IT research and advisory services. They're called Quadrant Knowledge Solutions. I think now they've just had a name change to QKS Group. But they do an annual review of DTO technologies, and they actually rate them in terms of technology excellence and customer impact. So obviously, if you're a vendor, you want to kind of be up in this top area here, and you can see there's a number of them that are up here. And I'm sure some of these softwares you'd recognize: SAP, IPM, Software AG, all large multi-billion-dollar software companies that play in this space. They also kind of have a definition for their DTO, very similar to Gartner's. They talk about operational and business processes, enabling improvements in process. So actually, we'll talk about that as far as the planning and tying into resources. That's an equivalently good definition, at least from our mind, of what a DTO is. So the dark dots, just to explain those, there's, I think, about 19 vendors here that were rated this past year by Quadrant. 16 of those, the ones with the dark dots, are also listed by Gartner as DTO, although Gartner yet don't do a rating of the DTO technologies. It's expected that will happen actually next year with Gartner. So we use this tool called Collaborative Business Planning. It sits on the Qualiware platform. Qualiware is well known as an enterprise architecture compliance management solution. It's actually a Danish product. And we first became aware of it through our work with the federal government because it is the standard for the Government of Canada enterprise architecture. So large organizations like D&D, CBSA, ESDC, all using Qualiware to help manage information, procedures, policies, and whatever in those large organizations. But CBP is kind of, think of it as a bit of an add-on to that platform. Quadrant in their recent assessment basically said, the partnership with CBP and Qualiware really provide this visualization to support, analytics and scenarios. So I'll show you some of that and kind of how Crosby's benefited from that. If we do, we can check with Alex and Mitch afterwards. If we do distribute the slides, there are some embedded links there that can get you more information on these technologies as well. So in an organization, so DTO models I'm showing this as a cloud because a lot of these solutions are now cloud subscription-based modeling as the whole software industry moves in that fashion. So models are actually, created by a modeler, somebody that would have the skills in a DTO technology to work with the process owners to both define and then develop and extract data to create these visualizations. And I'll go a little deeper on this shortly. Data suppliers may or may not be the process owners. They may be able to source information from ERP systems, other operational or financial sources to basically give us the quantitative information around the models that are actually built. Once those are created and validated, an important step, all the DTO models get validated against known historical results, make sure the models are actually accurately reflecting both the operational and financial outputs. Then those models can now be used by analysts or process owners or management to create and run different scenarios or simulations. So this is sort of the kind of getting into the future planning, future state planning. So quite often we'll call those DTO planners, where the modeler kind of builds the model. These folks will actually run simulations, and then this can be shared, typically again over a web interface across the organization, what we'll call collaborators that can get valuable insights into information, have some collaboration and some ideation and knowledge sharing, pass that back and continue to grow and enhance the value of these DTO models. So it's really an enterprise-wide. It's not shouldn't be necessarily just a tech tool used in the closet by a modeler, but should be pushed out and everybody can benefit and understand what that DTO model is all about. So I'm going to show you some of the aspects of this using kind of it's a demo model. Obviously, we can't share Crosby's information directly. So what we've done is we've created a little mini Crosby's model that followed what they do in their CPG packaging line. So we'll see what the modeler tool is like, and then we'll show you how to do some simulations and how they actually can consume this over the web. So that's my cue to move to another screen. So I'm going to jump into this tool now called Collaborative Business Planning, this one that sits on that Qualiware platform. And some of you may recognize this as a value stream map. So just to explain this process, this is L1A. So we're going to say this is line 1, product A. And basically the flow, the on-cycle flow for this value stream, basically materials come into the production area. There's a bit of paperwork that needs to take place. They kind of start the run, and then off it goes. And there's the pouch filling to put the powders into the pouches. Then those are case packed, then they're palletized, and then they're moved back into the warehouse out of the production area. So that's kind of the so-called the on-cycle flow. Off cycle, we have a lot of other activities. So things like changeovers from product to product, which have an impact on wait times, roll changes when they need to set up a new set of pouches, when the pouches basically run out, product testing, breakdowns. So all of these kind of components can factor into your total lead time. So we want to make sure we model all of these activities discreetly. I'll come back and explain a bit of the color coding here on when I move to the next diagram. You'll see some information below those. So things like the lead times and the processing times, the percent complete and accurate, how often. So for example, in pouch fill, basically it's saying about 96% complete and accurate. So there's a 4% rework component. And here we identify that actual rework. And because these models are integrated, the value stream map is integrated with the activity-based planning model, which I'll show you shortly. We can actually bring over some of the flow and some of the cost and unit cost information into that value stream diagram. So as we do scenarios and simulations looking at future state, we can actually see what the impact is on cost, and we can also see what the impact is. Here's our classic VSM timeline and some of the classic VSM metrics, our total lead time, our processing time, our value-added ratios, our rolled throughput yields. All of these can be calculated dynamically as we make changes to the process to see what the impact is. But again, as I say, this is integrated with an activity-based planning model. So if I jump over to that, so here we have a little different construct, although we'll get to the process line. I'm going to start at the top of the model because this is a full costed model. So when we look at the layout here, we sort of see, okay, we have a facility. That facility houses different components of the business, of the organization. So the management team has space, and that management team, provides guidance and oversight to all of these different functional groups. You'll see I've got, we use this in this tool, this concept of these purple circles are what are connectors. So to avoid a really complex kind of spaghetti highway, these connectors actually indicate where there are connections to the plant. So I can see over here, obviously the maintenance shop takes up some space, as does the sales team and so on. We have you can have direct lines or these connectors. They behave the same from a calculation point of view. So as I flow down, I go through management team. So here's my maybe frontline supervisors. Now I'm into my operators and my packers. We'll see in the production line. So I start to see some of these different resource components associated with the business. This model I've actually fully calculated. So now together with operational information, things like utilizations, things like flows and capacities, I can actually start to see things like costs. And I can actually over here in this header, I can actually see for this is a monthly model. This month on a net revenue of 1.1 million, they didn't really make a lot of money. They only made about $17,500 this month based on the way they ran that operation that month. We're going to see if we can improve that when we do some scenario playing. So from a costing point of view, when I open up any of these resources, these are actually fixed resources. So there's a distinction between fixed and variable resources. So electricity, for example, is a variable resource. Packaging materials will be a variable resource. Their cost and demand is driven by the products that they support. But if I open up this object, this plant, and I can now start to see, here's where I would map in my financials, my chart of accounts and my GL into the resource structure. And then these dollars basically will get pulled down through the model based on the operational flows. And I'll come back to explain that when we actually calculate a scenario. I just want to give you a little lay of the land first. So if I go now and look at the some of the color coding here, This model we've developed to actually give some indication into things like the total cost of quality. So as I'm sure many are familiar, there's the cost of good quality, which you really want to maximize, and the cost of poor quality, which you want to minimize. So we've shown things, so internal failure costs, so obviously maintenance repairs, bad thing. In fact, we would consider that a non-value added. So we can do some color coding here to highlight the different types of activities and the different types of ultimately costs for these types of models and so on. So if I move down to the next layer, and again, I'm going to go fairly quickly in this. We don't have a lot of time. I just want to give you a flavor for this type of DTO technology. Here we are looking at now for line 1. We have some operators running the line, and then we have some packers at the end of the line doing the case packing and the palletization. Here's the line itself. And the line is actually broken into 3 major activities. So from a capacity planning point of view, the utilization of that line this month was 81%. But a portion of that is because they have to take the line down to do a cleaning, obviously a food product. This was higher, obviously, in the hot chocolate with the milk allergens and so on, a higher hygiene requirement there. So that detracts from overall capacity, as does preventative maintenance. So even though preventative maintenance is a good cost of quality, it does impact our availability of resource. And then we have what's called the runtime. So that's actually when the machine is actually being consumed in the production line. So if I go down to the production line and look at the details here, you'll see that same flow that we saw in the value stream, the raw materials, pouch fill, case pack, palletizing, and so on. But now you start to see all the supporting activities and supporting resources that flow into those activities. So for example, in pouch filling, we have to actually what they call web rolls. That's actually where the pouches kind of are centered and then get cut and filled. So they have to do a web roll change at the end of these large rolls. And there's a cost for those rolls, of course. And then there's labor associated with the machine coming down, and that has an impact on, you see line 1 here. So that actually the time involved in that is going to reduce capacity from active production. So all of these costs, though, flow into the pouch filling together with the goods that are being packaged, and we can include things like shrinkage and so on to accommodate for what happens in the production area. We've got some labor, and here's the machine running for that. And then down below, this is one difficult area that, pouches misform, misfill, or whatever. So there's rework, in this case, 4% of the rework. So you may recognize that as the inverse of the percent complete and accurate. So now we can actually get and understand the impact. We have to make more product to get 19,000 cases. We actually have to, based on our rework rate of 4%, we have to actually create those extra pouches, and there's a cost associated with that. So we can now start to see those costs. We can start to see those unit costs. Here we're using the same color coding, so we know rework is an internal failure cost, as are breakdowns. So now we can actually start tabulating some of this information, do some reporting. I'll show you that in kind of the web tool. The real value, as I said, though, is for future planning. So if we were going to run a little scenario, let's say customer 1, who takes about 10,000 units per month, says, hey, I could use more. If you can give me a price break, I could actually use more product. And we say, oh, is that a good scenario? Would we make money out of that? So you may remember we were around $17,000 total profit. Let's see what the impact is if we said, okay, they want 50% more. We're going to take that to 15,000. As soon as we make a data change in a DTO model, basically the results get cleared because they're no longer valid. The model has to be calculated. This model is actually calculated from the bottom up operationally. So we want to know what the impact of the additional 5,000 is on rework, on the amount of pouch, how many changeovers, how many rolls we will need to do that. There is a financial impact, though. We do certainly want to offer an incentive for that additional. So let's say they want $3 off. So we're going to go from, let's say, $20 to $17. So we're going to get more volume, but we're not going to get the money for that volume. So what would the impact of that be from an overall profit point of view? So we can now calculate that model. So there's a little, in this tool, there's a little calculate button up here. And what that does, and this model is a bit bigger than just what I've showed you here, it'll actually start processing all of the costs and all of the flows from the bottom up and determining what the requirements are. And in this case, it says, oh, we've got a warning, we've got a capacity constraint that has been broken. So if I clear that and I start to go up and I start to look at the model, I see, oh, it's the problem. I don't have enough operators. Running 40 shifts with 2 operators, I don't have enough capacity. The line's okay. I'm at 90%. I went from 80 to 90, but I don't have enough people. So what possible solution? Maybe we have to add some other shifts. So if I added, let's say 10%, I'm going to add 4 shifts this month to make up that extra volume, that requirement that I have. I enter that and I actually then will recalculate the model. Does that relieve that broken constraint? Remember that shifts are actually tied into the number of people, into the salaries and components. So the financial impact of this is tied directly to what we call this variable. So you're going to actually see the financial impact. I don't have any broken constraints. So I can actually go back now, and because I don't have broken constraints, I can calculate the financials. So if I calculate those, I can actually see, was this a good strategy? Should I have moved ahead in taking that offer, as it were, and assuming I could run those extra shifts? And you can see my profitability has actually gone down. So I'd lose $10,000 in doing that scenario. So we might want to do a better think on that. So maybe we get, because this is kind of collaborative in nature, let's get the maintenance team and the production team together and talk about some of the benefits. What can be achieved on this line is line 1 production. And over here, you'll see some production statistics and numerics that we could flex. So let's say, what would happen if we could increase the line speed? So maintenance says, well, you know, if we fix this part, or we did some more preventive maintenance, we could maybe get this line speed up by 15%. So I'm going to take it up to 115 cases per hour. So we could evaluate the impact of that. We could also look at some of the other parameters when maintenance and operations start working together. So we could look at changeovers. So maybe we could speed up the changeovers. We could take that from 30 minutes down to 15 minutes. Maybe be a little bit better equipped, maybe a little bit better operator training. We could reduce that. Maybe as a result of some new maintenance procedures, we could actually reduce the amount of breakdowns. Let's say we're going to decrease that by 50%. So this would be kind of a projection based maybe on some lean initiatives that are underway, and maybe even the breakdown time, we can take it down to, let's say, half the time. Again, just doing a little illustration here. Because of the size of these, we've had a 50% increase in volume, so we're probably, our average run sizes are going to increase. Let's say we would double that. So I'm going to go from 900 to 1800 per run. That's obviously going to have an impact over on my overall changeovers, which again is downtime, has an impact on utilization. So I add that in. And now I've sort of said, okay, what other impacts? Maybe the maintenance thing around the pouch filling, maybe they fixed the problem with our pouch filling, and our rework maybe is only now 2%. What would the impact of all of this be? So I made very quickly a number of production, maintenance, operating procedure changes. I can now rerun this model. Calculate again, it goes in 2 passes, operationally from the bottom up and then financially from the top down, assuming there's no broken constraints and so on. So it's doing its math here, and we have no warnings coming up. So if I go back up to the top here, I can actually, now I could start tracking where my utilization rates are. And if I run the financial calculation, I can actually see, hopefully. Okay, so again, not as good as I was before, a little better than I was with the shift, but I still have those shifts running. I didn't change those shifts, so I'm still running those extra shifts. So now I've got my operators kind of twiddling their thumbs. They're more efficient on the line. We don't need those four extra shifts. In fact, we could probably take this down. Maybe we don't need all 40 shifts. Maybe we could go down to 38 shifts. So save 6 shifts this month. What would the impact of that be? on the economics, as it were. So I made that change. I recalculate the model again, make sure I haven't gone too far and reduced too many shifts to break a constraint. And nope, no problem at all. So I can go back up and I can recalculate the financials. And do we actually want to go ahead now if we could make those lean adjustments and improvements? And yeah, by all means, now we're up to 50,000 compared to 17,000. Again, if those are real and we can change, but at least we have an idea of the benefit that could be achieved. And there, would be some probably costs involved in that. We can factor that in as well. So anyways, hope that gives you a little illustration. This is the modeler tool. So the simulations and scenarios can be conducted here. They can also be done over the web. So this is kind of the web interface to that tool, CVP. So you can actually see these diagrams, the value streams. You can do some searching if you have a very large model and you want to look at one specific item. I go to L1A and say, oh, I want to look at my changeovers for line 1A, and it'll go in and analyze that information, bring up the cost, the unit cost, any of the information that you think is relevant can be brought forward. Highly customizable in that fashion. We can actually do collaboration, so they can have ideas. Those can be passed on. There's a governance workflow, can be passed on to different people for actioning. Change requests into the modeler to add new features, new functionality, new lines, perhaps. We can drill into these diagrams. So here we have that value stream again. And if I went and looked at, let's look at breakdowns. And if I click on that, what it does is it goes and gets all the information out of the ABP model and tells us, what the total cost, unit cost, all the contributory costs, the financials associated with that particular element. So all of the dollars that actually flow down based on the chart of accounts and so on. And then we can also bring in some analytics. So if I want to integrate, typically we'll use Power BI, but it could be any BI tool that an organization has. And we can start doing some analysis on the full set of data results that are coming out. So here I can actually see all of the different types of activities. Now I'm summing up results across these models. And I can look at the overall cost of sanitation. I can look at the overall cost of breakdowns. If I was interested in that total cost of quality, I can run different scenarios. I only gave you a little illustration, but you could actually run and put as many in here as you want, and then stack them up, compare, which strategy would be the best to go forward with, at least as a first pass, and where were you going to optimize when, from an external failure point of view, and look at the cost components of that. So again, just a little flavor of this particular solution. Again, one of a number that are certainly out there on the market. So I'm going to go quickly back and finish off a few slides. I do want to leave a few minutes for Q&A. So the benefits that Crosby's got from their work, basically understanding and basically having a common understanding of the production line processes and identifying where some of those big hitter costs were, allowed them to focus on where those pain points were. And in doing so, in the hot chocolate area alone, they wound up saving about 16 full 12-hour shifts of production capacity by doing some optimization work. So that added tremendously to the bottom line as they filled that with additional product. Sanitation, they looked at all of the costs associated with the high level of sanitation. And again, sometimes just looking at the dollars associated with things can change your perspective. And they went ahead and saved probably 200 hours of overall sanitation time and downtime associated with things being cleaned, changing the procedures and so on. Obviously, better profitability and costing analysis that led them to understand kind of the cost not only of their products, but of their customers as well. And they found products and services that were being over or under costed by up to 30% based on traditional costing. So the costing approach becomes very handy, and then became used in budgetary planning on an annual basis for making decisions on new products, product configuration changes, adding customers and contracts. But they like to say that one of the biggest benefits was basically this common understanding that everybody, right from James Crosby right down to the frontline operator, kind of had this common understanding of how the business worked across all these 10 production lines. So if you're interested in getting more information, again, if you get the detail, there's a link here. The financial controller for Crosby's actually spoke at CPA Canada conference a year or two ago. You can actually hear it. You don't have to hear it from my mouth. You could actually hear it from his as well. So in summary, DTO models, be they CBP or otherwise, they really take how your business operates. In the CBP tool, we talk about resources, process, and demands. They marry the financial and operational data so that support your business, and then give you these visualizations, these new insights into operations and finances, give you a simulation and scenario playing what if tool to understand what the future impact of change is, be that product change, customer change, maybe sustainability initiatives, which are a big one these days, of course, and then push this information out to the masses. So everybody, again, is singing off that same song sheet, and you're making better decisions as a result. So we like to say that DTO models support multifunctional decisions, be they strategic, new investments, new products, maybe doing risk analysis, operational for planning, resource capacity planning, efficiency, bringing things into dashboards and KPIs, and certainly on the financial side for costing and budgeting. And again, done so in a collaborative fashion. So there's no more of this debating on results. Everybody kind of buys into to that overall process. Derek just mentioned a couple of upcoming things. Obviously, Derek gave a good synopsis of this DTO adoption program that we have running with DNS Nova Scotia, Dalhousie. So encourage you to pop over and take a look at that. We'd love to have you consider this as part of something that we'll be embarking on in early 2025. If you're interested in some more training, we do have some public workshops that we offer as Landmark coming up. There's one in about a month from now in the end of October. That's a bit of generic. It's not focused exclusively on manufacturing. We will be developing as part of this program a manufacturing specific workshop, which will also be available kind of in a public format early in the new year. But if you're interested in getting more of the details sooner than that, you're more than welcome to join us at that event. So there's Derek's contact information, my contact information. I guess, Mitch, we can throw the floor open for any questions folks might have.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, Mike. Very, very informative. It's quite honestly, when you start kind of unwrapping what digital twin really means, some of the information you showed is quite, it's amazing to see what's involved with it, right? So one question that I have, and it's really kind of an important one here, is like for digital twin, how would you handle with, we've seen Crosby, and I know on some of the companies on your website, it talks about some bigger organizations. How does this apply to, some smaller, medium enterprises? I know Crosby is probably middle of the road, but
right.
Is all these things applicable to, the smaller organizations, and what kind of steps would they do to, to consider digital twinning?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really business process modeling, which is, in its pure sense is every organization. It doesn't necessarily be manufacturing. So manufacturing is certainly very process orientated, be it discrete or continuous. So being able to model, understanding, and most organizations will understand, what resources do what, and they probably have some data associated with that. So bringing this all together, though, into this visual format, let's face it, Excel is still the #1 modeling tool out there, and I'm sure a lot of organizations, small and large, use Excel for planning purposes per se. And truly, from a math point of view, Excel can do a lot of the algorithms, and you can build formulas and so on. Excel is very challenging though from a maintenance point of view, as you add new products or new resources or test different ideas and so on. So DTO technology, kind of encompasses that. So, so to answer your question specifically, yes, small manufacturers can definitely benefit. Where we've seen the biggest impact is where you have diversity in your product or service offerings. That's typically where you're going to have some misunderstandings around costs and costing and then profitability analysis. And that's really important, particularly for small organizations, because the profit line in some cases says whether they're going to be able to stay in business. So making sure you understand what your overall profit margin is for the different products or services that you may offer in support of your products, and also where you have a lot of indirect costs. So again, typically as organizations scale up, they get more indirects and more diversity. Those are the kind of the two key factors. So you certainly better insights as you grow larger, but the same value proposition on the small side for sure.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you. And I know, we got a couple of minutes left. So what we can do, Mike, and Derek, is there's a few questions definitely Alex will send, and just to kind of get some more information. So once again, I know on behalf of CME, thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to you, Derek.
For sure. Yeah, so again, if you have any questions, reach out to our team. We're happy to kind of answer any questions. And the main thing is we are looking, applications are open. We are looking for 5 manufacturers who are interested in taking a part of this. The requirements are listed in our website. So one main thing is that we do require some commitment in terms of staffing and resources, so that, again, we can ensure success of the adoption and maintenance afterwards as well. If you're a manufacturer with 500 or less employees, that's really the target audience where this grant is provided to and built for. So as I said, reach out to our team if you have any questions, and we'll be providing and working with Mike on providing more training as well in the new year. Throughout all of 2025, we'll be having various workshops throughout the year to help be able to provide, again, more training to more manufacturers who don't necessarily need the adoption program, but are interested in training their staff on using some of these QualiWare software and things like that. So yeah, with that said, thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate you listening to this, and really hope you learned something valuable and bring this back to kind of your leadership team, or even just your regular team, to talk about this topic essentially, to understand what the benefits are for your organization. And hopefully this will drive innovation within the province for us.
Perfect. Well, great. Thank you very much. And I think if there's any questions, or we're gonna actually upload this on our IOE website. So more to come. So thanks a lot to you both.
Great. Thank you, Mitch.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Alex. Have a good day.